Let's look at our second application of quadratic functions. The Association of Grape Growers of America, AGA, commissioned a study of the consumption of wine by adults in the U.S. The data that was analyzed was taken from 1980 through 2005. The data were converted to the following quadratic model. The function f of x equals 4 thousandths x squared minus 94 thousandths x plus 2.6 models U.S. wine consumption f of x in gallons per person. So the function value is gallons per person. X years after 1980. So x represents the years after 1980. F of x, the function, represents the gallons per person of wine that was consumed. Now, according to this function, what was the U.S. adult wine consumption in 2005? So if we want to know what the wine consumption was in 2005, 2005 is a year. That's what the x value is related to, isn't it? The x value is the number of years after 1980. So if they're asking us to figure out what the wine consumption was according to this model in 2005, we're going to have to put a value in for x. X is dealing with the years. The function is dealing with the consumption in gallons per person. Well, 2005, how many years after 1980 is that? That's 25 years after 1980, isn't it? So in order to answer that question, we would evaluate this function at x equals 25. And I did all of that arithmetic for us. And when we do that arithmetic, we get a value of 2.75 for the function's value when x is 25. And x being 25, x is the number of years after 1980, so x being 25 means 25 years after 1980, which would be 2005. So 2.75 is the function's value. Remember, the function's value is the gallons per person consumed. So what we could say is this: there were 2.75 gallons per person consumed in 2005. So according to this model, in 2005, the average consumption was 2.75 gallons of wine per person. Now, going to the second question there, it says, according to this function, in which year was wine consumption at a minimum? So now we're wanting to find that vertex value, because remember, when the coefficient of the squared term is positive, that's a parabola that looks like this, and down at the vertex is the minimum. So we want to know the x value, because x value is related to years. We want to know the x value when that minimum consumption of wine occurred. And remember, the way to find the x value is by finding minus b over 2a. So that's minus negative 0.094 divided by 2 times 0.004. And what that ends up giving us, consult my arithmetic here, that gives us 11.75. And it said to round that to the nearest year. Well, then that's approximately 12, isn't it? So the x value is approximately 12. And remember, the x value represents the years after 1980. So 12 years after 1980 would make that then 1992. In 1992, the wine consumption was at a minimum. And, well, what was that minimum wine consumption? That's the next question. What does the function give for per capita consumption for that year of the minimum consumption? So we would then evaluate that function at the 12, the x value that we found. So we would take 4 1,000ths times the square of 12 minus 94 thousandths times 12 plus 2.6. And when we do that, the result is approximately 2. It comes out to 2.048, which is approximately 2. So that would tell us 2 gallons per person was the consumption there in 1992. And that consumption was the minimum for the data that they collected from 1980 to 2005. All of that data they collected in 1992, the consumption was at a minimum of 2 gallons per person. And again, by analyzing this quadratic function, we were able to determine that. And how did we know it was a minimum? Because this coefficient is positive, which means our parabola opens up, which means the smallest value of the function is down there at the vertex. And through that analysis, we were able to answer these questions that we were asked.